y'all doing today? Y'all good? Yeah, I'm good. Let me want to get you some Bibles. So if you don't have a Bible, just raise your hand. We want to get a Bible in your hands. Go ahead and turn to Hebrews chapter 12. We're going to open up chapter 12 this morning. Turn to Hebrews chapter 12, verses 1 through 4. But y'all good though? All right. If you'll stand with me. Again, if you don't have a Bible, raise your hand. We need a Bible over here. If you don't have a Bible, raise your hand. We'll get you a Bible. Hebrews chapter 12, verses 1 through 4. All right. Hebrews chapter 12, verses 1 through 4. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. And let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. In your struggle against sin, you have not yet resisted to the point of shedding your blood. This is the word of the Lord. You may be seated. Hallelujah. I think I'm going to go a little slowly with you and just talk with you guys some this morning. Look at Hebrews. Look at verse 1. I'm going to read this again. I think that's 1 and 2. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witness, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. Hebrews have been describing the people of God as a people that have been on a journey. They've been traveling. They've been on a journey. A people sojourning through the wilderness of this broken world that has been shaped by idolatry, shaped by wickedness, formed by sin. These people, they've been journeying, if you're following what Hebrews is saying, have been journeying and resisting the culture of sin and idolatry throughout the various cultural moments in this present evil age. They've been sojourning by faith, trusting the word of their God, sojourning, trusting his word. And then this morning it uses this word cloud, this great cloud of witnesses. That word cloud, it means a large group. A large group, this great large group. Now in Jewish thought, if you only have but 2 to 3 witnesses, a testimony would be considered valid. What Hebrews has been drawing our attention to more than 1, more than 2, more than 3, but this large cloud of witnesses. People whose lives have borne witness to God's faithfulness, whose stories function like a gallery of embodied testimonies that strengthen our endurance today. We slow down in chapter 11. Intentionally walk through that slowly. And in chapter 11 alone, we saw faith that endured, trusting God to deliver from adversity. I'm just enduring and waiting and trusting you. In chapter 11, we saw faith that advanced, that went on the offensive in order to accomplish victories and enforce justice. In chapter 11, we saw faith that displayed the mighty power of God. Despite according to this world's standards, you look weak. Hebrews has been having all this talk with us about faith and this journey, because this journey is a family thing. It's a family thing. He's talking to the family. He's having a family conversation. This is what we do. We walk by faith. We journey by faith. We teach it to our kids. That's what we're supposed to do, teach our little ones. Listen, when you go to school and you're dealing with your friends and you're dealing with the teachers, you're going to hear some things, you're going to see some things, but let me remind you, you're journeying by faith, little one. Your Father has given you wisdom as you navigate this world. Let me remind you of the journey. We're taught to go out and tell people that we don't know about the good news of the gospel. Why? Because we have brothers and sisters that are scattered and asleep, and we want them to know about the journey that the family is on. We're on a journey, family. We've been traveling by faith. This cloud of witnesses have both traveled the journey before us and completely surround us on the journey. But this morning, Hebrews turns the camera away from Abraham, away from Moses, away from the great cloud of witnesses to us. It says, since we are surrounded, let us throw off. Let us run. There is a race marked out for us. Fix our eyes on Jesus. As we entered this journey of faith, we've entered with the testimonies all around us. But now our lives add to the great cloud of witnesses. Our lives add to those testimonies. People will bear witness to the testimony of God's faithfulness in the big and the mundane moments of our lives. They will tell the stories about it. This witness of testimony of faith in our cultural moment, right here today, will become testimony to the next generation. It'll become part of the stories that they will tell, stories about God's faithfulness in our suffering. They will tell their sons and their daughters, I remember this and I remember that. His faithfulness in context to our money, whether we have or have not. His context to his faithfulness in our marriages, in our family. They will tell the stories. Stories of the faithful stewardship of power in a world where power is distorted and abused. They will tell the stories. They will say, this is how it looked in our times. Stories about his guidance through conflict, through war. Stories about his keeping us in the midst of temptation. They will tell the stories about him leading us to repentance when our prideful heart would not do it unless God led. Stories about him guiding his people through oppressive systems, through cultures that suppress his glory. They will be told throughout the age. Even as we tell this is everyday life, though. Everything I just described is everyday life. It's the everyday reality of life's journey. It's the mission field on which we display our faith to our King. It's the mission field. Hebrews is saying, listen, it's your turn. It's your turn. But Hebrews is giving us more context to the journey this morning, because this journey isn't like some brisk hike. Like, I'm on a nice little journey, have my little knapsack, and we walking. Hebrews is like, let me talk to you something about this journey. Here's what he says about the journey. He says, let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. The journey is more like a race. You need to run and you need to persevere. Here's that journey. What? You didn't tell me about that. You need to run and you need to persevere. Which implies there's competing forces. What? A race? Run a race. It implies there's competing forces. It implies there's opposition. There's ops for your soul. It imports tension automatically. What? A race? It wakes us up from our lull. In the first century AD, there was this thing called the pentathlon. It was this really prestigious athletic competition that served as this ultimate test of physical versatility. It was this massive part of Greco-Roman fabric of time. It was held during these religious festivals and events. It was all over the place. It was also used during military training inside the Roman Empire. You still see them around today. It had about 5 stages to it. They all knew about this pentathlon. It started off with a foot race. There was a competition of running, right? It was the culture of their time. It started off with this foot race. They had the long jump. And in the long jump, they had the weights on them. Are you going to make it through? They had the javelin throw, testing accuracy and distance. You had the discus, and they wrapped the whole thing up with a scrap. You had to fight. There was a wrestling match or a boxing match, and they wrapped the whole thing up. This was the decisive event of the whole thing. Let's see how you fight. Now, during the time of the New Testament, athletic games were always used as metaphors culturally to paint a picture. Metaphors like running the race or fighting the good fight. They was immediately understood by the community because the games were at the heart of social life. Just like how sports are today. Like if I go in and I say, no game, no pain, no gain. Whether you ever been in the gym or no gym culture, you know that I'm talking about the cost of growth, but that comes from gym culture. If I go and I say, that thing that happened to that was foul, what happened to that person? Whether you are into sports or not, the term, that foul, that's a sports term. But you know that means something crossed the line because it's in our culture. Hebrews is using common terms that speak culturally in order to give the believers perspective. Encouraging the believer to view the journey of life more like a pentathlon with obstacles at every stage. Filled with opposition, fighting against the glory of your God. Fighting against his people and anything that reflects his kingdom. He wants you to understand this. It's the thorns and the thistles of the fall. It's the external and internal opposition to the good work that God said. Now there's going to be thorns and thistles doing it. It's the nature of sin, warring and building rival kingdoms. It's the tears growing alongside the wheat. All creating lies and deception. But the believer knows the truth and holds on to that truth and faith. And he is encouraging them. The believer knows the truth, holds on to faith, and knows that this brokenness of this world, the wicked plans of the enemy are not stronger than the sovereign plans of our God. We know that. Not only are they not stronger than the sovereign plans of our God, nothing is outside of the scope of his power, scope of his reach, the scope of his creativity to accomplish those plans. We know this, and we hold on to that. And with that, we navigate the journey of this world, this race in faith, trusting his word. Now, here's the thing about these runners in the pentathlon. They didn't craft their own course. They didn't choose the obstacles. They didn't choose the timing of his appearance. They had to run the race that was already marked out for them. Their job was to run what was set before you. And Hebrews wants us to focus on running the race set before us. Now, by running the race, it means, is this a foot race or a wrestling match? What kind of course or track am I on? What are the conditions? Run the race that's set before you. Don't be so caught up running the race set before somebody else. Run the race set before you. I was watching this movie F1 on one of those channels, and it had to do with NASCAR races, right? NASCAR drivers and their whole team, before a race comes, they will study the intended course. The whole team will go by and look at it. They get a bunch of experts. You know this course, you've been on this course, tell me about this course. They will watch videos about the course. They will practice runs and even simulations on the course because they want to study the race set before them. Sometimes they will walk the track personally to inspect the track. Why? Because while the track doesn't change, the way how they treat it is like you have to learn the course. Because the conditions change. The buildup over time and the temperature and tires falling off and traffic, all those change how you run the course. What is the race set before you? What is the course set before you? The particular and or common context that God has allowed to be set before you, in which you are to bear witness to God's goodness. What is the race set before you? I think about Acts 17 and 26. It says, "For one man he made all the nations that they should inhabit the whole earth, and he marked out their appointed times in history and the boundaries of their lands." God determines the times and the boundaries of where we would live, which means your cultural moment, the idols, the sin patterns, the brokenness and the pressures of that cultural moment. The things that are happening in that particular time aren't random to God, they just seem random to you. These things, they become part of the terrain that you're called to trust Him and display your faith that all would see. This is part of that race set before you. In seminary, we studied missional theology, and for the whole first year, we focused on the things that shaped and formed Western culture. The instructor felt Western culture was a major aspect of the race set before us, where we would be displaying our faith. Let's study what has shaped this culture that you was born into, so that you could do effective missional work. We needed to study the water that we was all swimming in. Place, identity, these are all parts of the race set before you. Things that we didn't choose. Family of origin, ethnicity, gender, upbringing, community realities, all factor into you displaying your faith in these contexts. They all become where God says, here, you didn't choose this, display your faith right here, in this. Our testimony, our witness, and the goal isn't successful circumstances, it's a life that bears witness to God's faithfulness in all circumstances. So He gives us a variety of them, because His name is being lifted up in that circumstance and in that circumstance. That trusting Him over all things, all idols, including the idol of self. Unplanned moments, unplanned issues that seem to just come out the blue. But there's a race that was set before us, though. It's only out the blue and catching us off guard. They all become unexpected, unplanned moments where endurance and faith gets displayed in unexpected ways. And then God has this way of using every moment and every experience, good or bad, together for the good of those that are in Christ Jesus. I think about the military and the Navy that uses these pentathlons too. Specialized competitions for armed forces that involved obstacle courses, swimming, throwing your weapon, but it was done on purpose. It was to build general military athleticism and composure under pressure. Build motivation, to strengthen relationships. As you get older, as you grow, you start to realize that God is doing the same thing with us. Same thing with us. You stop trying to avoid all the tough things and start trying to learn to navigate them wisely. Probably he's trying to teach me something, because this is like the 115th time I've dealt with this tough thing, just 150 different kinds of ways. Probably I need to learn something inside of it. You start to learn that these things are functioning to sharpen us, to disciple us, to make us whole, to teach us how to trust him, not just in theology, but in practice. In practice. How to trust him under pressure. Wouldn't we love to just trust him when there wasn't a pressure to give in? We're born into this world. Our eyes are now awakened to the reality that we're on this journey. And Christ, he's on this journey with us. That the journey of faith is actually a race, not this brisk walk. And we're already on it. And now we start to realize the internal, external, cultural, emotional, personal, communal opposition to our faith is the enemy trying to suppress the witness of God in our lives. All these things, him focusing so that God isn't seen. So we have to run the race that's set before us with perseverance. And Hebrews gives us these 4 jewels that I want to close us with. 4 jewels of wisdom to running this race. 1, travel light and wise. Think about Jonah in Jonah chapter 1, verses 4-5. And Jonah, he's in the boat with them, right? And the boat is about to sink, right? Because God is trying to get after Jonah. So what they start to do is they start to throw things off the boat. Anything that is hindering them from staying afloat. Some of us got things in our lives, everything that hinders. 1 Corinthians says all things are lawful, but not all things are beneficial. Some things aren't sin. But you know and I know that they are massive hindrances in your life. Some things, they're not sin. I get it. We can have a conversation about it. But there's such a hindrance on your journey of faith right now. It's slowing you down. It's weighing you down. There is a race. There's an obstacle course. There's opposition. And you want to carry all these weights while you're running? So the first step, let's be wise here. Let's be wise here. But let's take off the weights. It's like trying to run a jump with weights. So I remember back in the days when Sean Marion was on the Suns, I saw this commercial, right? Yeah, right? That was a dope time. I liked the Suns back then, man. You're absolutely right. I was like, yo, I'm a Suns fan. And then after that, I just wanted to fight them. No. I saw this video, it was a commercial, and and Sean was going there, he got boom, and he was dunking left and right. I'm like, dang, this guy's a beast. And then they show him take off this vest. It was a vest filled with weights, and it just hit the ground, boom. And the whole idea was, yo, you thought he was killing it. Imagine how it's gonna be without the weights. Some of you inside here are thinking you're good because you're still moving around with those weights. You're making some progress. It hasn't sunk you. But imagine how far you would run for our King if you got rid of those weights. Imagine how hard you would jump if you got rid of those weights. Imagine how much you would stand if you got rid of the weights that you know. I'm not talking about hidden weights. I know I could be transparent with y'all because I'm talking to me and stuff. So I know, if I know I got some, I know y'all do too, because the stuff that's common to man. Well, let me keep going because I got some point in time I got to wrap this up. And then you got the sin that so easily entangles. Okay? You got that ain't sin, but man, are you running slow? I don't know who's going to tell you. Then you got but that is. The sin that Hebrews is talking about, right, is ultimately the sin of disbelief. That's been Hebrews' story, right? Ultimately the sin of disbelief, right? The thing is, disbelief creeps in a million different ways. It shows its face. Because we have a million different areas inside our life that you don't really believe God is king right here. In a general sense. But when that thing runs up and it's like, oh, right here, right now, do I believe that he's a good king? Right here, right now. And we got to run that back over and over because you got things that's not a sin. And things like, you said I'm king here and I've been gracious with you, but you don't really act like I'm king here. I'm going to hold you account to that sooner or later, but I've been gracious with you, right? And I'm just trying to be real with y'all this morning, right? Because the text is saying there's a race set before us. And he's trying to give us wisdom on how to navigate it, how to run it, right? We're all on it, right? And he could talk like this and knowing that he hits the crowd. So God is saying, lay aside that disbelief that you know was a lie and start running hard for your king. And many of the weights that we are carrying on us, or weights that the world has put on us, weights that society has put on us, weights that you put on yourself. Like, you can take it off. You don't want to decide to do that. You can stop. They're not weights that Jesus put on us. Instead, this is what Jesus says. Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light. The enemy done lied to you and told you that burden is light and it's weighing you down. Jewel number 2, clarify your focus. It says, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith. It's important that we have our eyes fixed on the right things. You're running this race and you're like, well, where's the finish line? Fix your eyes on Jesus. This implies turning your face away from one thing so that you can intentionally focus on another. Whatever that thing is, fix your eyes on Jesus. See, God uses the obstacles of life in order to shape us more and more into his image and likeness. In John 3:2, he says, we are God's children now, and what we will be has not yet appeared. But we know that when he appears, we shall be like him, because we shall see him as he is. There is this progress where God is shaping us more and more into the image and likeness of our God. The issues and circumstances and the obstacles, even the race itself, they can't become the point. Jesus is the point. You being shaped into his image. Jesus is the point. If our eyes remain fixed on the brokenness and the suffering instead of Jesus, we miss the point. If our eyes stay fixed on the situations and the circumstances, we miss the point. And we start to spiral in disbelief, because what if the circumstances changing wasn't the point? What if your maturity was the point? And only when you matured did that circumstance that seemed so heavy, you realize ain't that heavy at all. And so he can't change the weight, because you have to grow up. And when you grow up, you realize, oh dang, hold on, that thing was holding me down? There's a Lord that's loving you so well if you get it. Clarify your vision, focus on Jesus, knowing he is the perfecter of faith himself. Not you, not me. He is the perfecter of your faith. Focusing on him. Am I becoming more like him? Am I looking more like him? Do people see more of him in me? I'm not just talking about my perception of me. Are people seeing more of him in me? Are people seeing more of his ways, his dispositions in me? For the joy set before him, endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down on the right hand of the throne. Hebrews is telling us the way we navigate the brokenness is keeping our eyes set on Jesus. Jesus is the joy that's set before us. His will, his kingdom. And he endured the brokenness of the cross by focusing on the joy that's set before him. And if we study his word and we look at the joy that's set before him, earlier on while we was going through Hebrews, it was talking about the joy set before him. He was like, yo, I want to identify with my brothers and sisters. I'm putting on flesh to show solidarity with him. The joy set before him is the will of the Father and his inheritance, and we are a part of that. So on one hand saying, yo, Jesus is your joy, march towards him. But look what he did, because he was marching towards you. He was marching towards you as part of the Father's will. A part of what he was doing. You are his inheritance, and the joy of having you as his inheritance is what's driving him forward. We are a part of that inheritance, which leads me to jewel number 3. Consider him deeply and constantly in every stage of the race. Consider him deeply. It says, consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. Consider him. Don't just remember that Jesus suffered, but think deeply on it over and over again. Consider how he endured. Consider what he actually accomplished so that we don't have to lose heart. Consider it. Create a culture of considering him deeply. Considering his heart's motivations deeply. Considering the ways and postures of our King deeply, over and over again as you navigate the course of the race set before you. The perfecter of our faith who joined the journey with us. Consider him. Consider what he endured and accomplished for us. Consider how he pressed forward knowing what he knew. Consider how he got to the point where he was like, all right, Dad, I know I agreed on the race set before me. There's a particular obstacle on the race set before me. Can we switch courses real quick? Could this cup not pass? Nevertheless, I wanted to slow down there because Jesus wanted to switch courses. He didn't enter not knowing the courses, not knowing the race. But Jesus was there, was like, Hey, Dad, I know I said, but is it possible? Nevertheless, thy will be done. In order that we would not be under the bondage and fear of death, he endured all the way past death. When he says nevertheless, and the Lord is like, but that's the course. That's the course that accomplishes the joy set before you. Let me wrap this up. I'm going to close now. Jewel number 4. Nevertheless, jewel number 4. Give your entire life to the resistance. Give it all. 4 says, in your struggle against sin, you have not yet resisted to the point of shedding blood. Studies show that this generation that's on the planet today has the lowest threshold of pain than any generation that has ever existed on the planet. That we give in quicker than any generation that ever existed on the planet. We start considering throwing in the towel. This generation that lives on the planet. We don't keep pressing in and keep pressing in and keep pressing in. We give up way too quick. Here there is this example of Jesus. And the faith here and the trust is trust that goes past your fear, past the reason why you would throw in the towel. It has to be bigger. It has to be more important. But this is part of the race that's set out before you. This morning, I wanted to linger and end there with this prayer, looking at Jesus, looking at what he accomplished for us right here on the throne. I want you to think about how quick you throw in the towel. I want you to think about some of the things you resisted and how you got to the point where you're like, nah, I'm going to stop right here. And remember that your king, when it came to the point where he would say, nah, I would stop right here, he continued so that you wouldn't lose heart. That's what the text is saying here. So that you wouldn't lose heart. Not because he couldn't throw in a towel. Not because he's not God. But you, later on, will have to turn and look towards him, because there won't be no other example on this planet that will hold you more than him. Here's how I want to pray. Probably if you're inside this room and you haven't trusted and believed in God, and you really, really, really are like, man, you know what? I haven't actually really trusted him. You can go to church and not trusted him, right? And but today, God is moving inside of your heart, and you're like, I want to make this thing for real. I've been avoiding the race that's set out before me. I've been playing around and doing all the other distractions. But I want to own the race that's set before me. I know that there's diverse things that all of us navigate. But we're all on the same track, running different aspects of that pentathlon of life. Some of us are throwing the javelin, some of us are scrapping right now. Other of us are running for our lives. Some of us got them heavy weights trying to jump. But we're in a community together. So if you're like, man, I want this Jesus and I've been playing around, I would love to pray with you. Probably you're like, man, I know you talked about those heavy weights. When I try to let go of them, I feel like they hold on to me. I need help. I'd love to pray with you. That's what we're here for. To run this race together. One of those things about those pentathlons is that it built community relationships over different divisions. People going through stuff together. Build relationship